G'day, I'm Warwick Schiller and G'day, I'm Warwick Schiller and welcome back to the Principles of Training. Today we're going to talk about a principle that I call create a tool before you use a tool. A lot of times I'll see people trying to solve a problem or an issue with a horse, and they are going about the right way. They're quite knowledgeable about what they're doing and they're going about solving the problem the right way, but the tools they have do not work perfectly well. And if your tools don't work perfectly well, the problem won't be solved perfectly well. And a good analogy I use all the time is, let's say if you're a lady watching this and you've got a washing machine at home and you say to your husband, "Hey hon, the washing machine has a leak in the back of it. Can you take a look?" So your husband looks back there and he sees that where the cold water hose goes in, there's a hose clamp on it and it's a little bit loose and there's a bit of water dripping out of there. And he sees that there's a flathead screwdriver he needs to tighten that hose clamp up. So he goes and gets his flathead screwdriver, puts it on there and starts doing the thing. It will tighten it if the flathead screwdriver is a perfectly good flathead screwdriver that works. But if that screwdriver handle is old and it's kind of perished and the handle is loose on the shaft, you can put that on there and turn it all day long and you won't tighten the screw because the screwdriver is not perfectly good. But if you had if you got your screwdriver out and did that, and that shaft was loose on the handle, what could you do? Well, you could get some adhesive and you could glue it on there, couldn't you? So if you go and get your adhesive, now you've got your adhesive, which is your tool to fix your tool, which is your screwdriver to fix your problem, which is your washing machine. So you get your tool to fix your problem, and you got to take the lid off the adhesive and can't get the lid off. I must have left some glue on the threads last time. Now you're stuck because your tool doesn't work to fix your tool, it doesn't work to fix your problem. So now you need something to get the lid off the adhesive. So you dig out a pair of pliers. Now you got your tool to fix your tool to fix your tool to fix your problem. And I left them out in the rain and my pliers are rusted shut. So you've got a tool to fix your tool to fix your tool to fix your problem, and you're still stuck because your tools don't work perfectly well. But then if your pliers were stuck, you could get some penetrating oil or some WD-40, and if you had that and it worked, it works, you could spray it on your pliers, get your pliers working, put your pliers on the lid of the glue, get the glue off, put the adhesive on the shaft, slip it in the handle, you wait 8 hours or whatever it says, and then whoop, off you go and your problem is solved. So I'm really big on making sure that my tools work before I try to solve a problem. One common problem I see is people say trailer loading. They're trying to load their horse on a trailer with a tool that doesn't work. They're either trying to send their horse in, they're asking their horse to do that, and their horse doesn't send well, so obviously they can't send it into the trailer. Or they are trying to lead the horse into the trailer and he doesn't lead terribly well. So that's a really common one I see. And if you think about trailer loading is just advanced groundwork inside a very small metal box. And so if your groundwork doesn't work terribly well outside the trailer or away from the trailer, it's not going to work very well near the trailer. You know, another place I see people having troubles is tying a horse up. And, you know, when you tie a horse up, for me, they've got to know 3 things. They've got to be able to stand quite well without any influence from me. They've got to have the ability to not need to move their feet all the time. They need to be able to respond quite well to pressure on the halter. You put pressure on that halter and they should get off of that pressure. And they should be quite unflappable. You know, things don't startle them quite easily. They're reasonably well desensitized. I don't mean, you know, desensitized to death, but I do mean they don't startle very easily. So if they respond to halter pressure well, they don't startle very easily, and they can stand still quite easily, then you could tie your horse up, and then they'd tie up quite well. I mentioned before about people having problems loading their horse into the trailer. Another problem I hear a lot of is, my horse won't stand still in the trailer. How do I fix that? And I will say, well, what is he like when you tie him up? Oh, well, he can't stand still there either. So if your horse can't stand still tied up, he probably can't stand still inside a horse trailer. So now that we're a little further along in the series, what you'll find is the principles we're working on now will contain other principles we've talked about earlier. And two of the earlier principles were, one of them was the need to know the answer before you ask the question, which is pretty self-explanatory. But another one was the second principle we filmed, which was called don't go to bed angry. And that whole don't go to bed angry thing is about when you're training your horse, as they start to get a bit uptight in the training, you've got to teach them how to come back down, because that is a very, very, very important tool we're going to need to use later on. And one of the big questions I get a lot is from people who are trial riding, and I was out trial riding on my horse and something spooked him and he got all wound up and I couldn't get him unwound. And one of the tools you need when you go out on that trial ride is the ability to bring your horse back down. If they don't have that tool before you leave and go on your trial ride and they get wound up, you're stuck. The tool doesn't work. It's like the screwdriver that spins around. Your tool doesn't work, and so you cannot fix your problem no matter how much you try, no matter what exercises you do. If you're doing the exercises that are supposed to bring your horse down, but your horse has not been taught how to come down, those exercises will not work. So apart from teaching your horse how to have some emotional intelligence, the mental ups and the mental downs, that's probably the biggest mental tool you got to have. And then all the physical tools you want to have on these horses. You know, I want them to be very responsive to my right rein. I want them to be very responsive to my left rein. I want to be able to slide my left leg back and be able to move their hips around quite well. I want to be able to slide my right leg back, move their hips around quite well. I want them to be able to go forward quite well off both legs. I would like them to be able to go backwards quite well off both reins. And probably the last thing I start teaching them is how to move off my inside leg. And I want them to be able to, if I am walking a circle and I put my inside leg on, I want to be able to move over off my leg like that. And I want to be able to move over and off my right leg like that. Once you've got all those tools working, then you can use those tools to create or to solve a great deal of problems. I mean, almost every ridden problem would involve using one of those tools to solve your issues. And a very common thing I see people doing riding, say, a young horse, is they're riding around and the horse drops its shoulder as it's going around a corner. And so dropping their shoulder, if you're not sure what that means, imagine my shoulders are the horse's shoulders and my hips are the horse's front feet. You'd like the shoulders to line up over the front feet. But when a horse drops its shoulder, they'll do this. They will move their weight, their upper weight, their weight on the top of their body further in than their feet are, and so they're a little bit unbalanced. And a very common solution for that is to use your inside leg. So if a horse was dropping his shoulder in here, you use your inside leg and you can push him up and out like that. And I see a lot of people doing that with a young horse, especially on their early rides. So they're riding a young horse, it's on the early rides. They haven't taught the horse the tool yet. They haven't taught the horse how to get off their inside leg. And they're trying to use their inside leg to solve a problem. And to me, it just makes that whole thing really, really dull. So what I'm going to do when I teach a horse to get off my inside leg, if you think about some of the early principles, make the wrong thing hard and the right thing easy. One thing a horse, or two things a horse tends to do when you're trying to get them, trying to do a bit of a leg yield like this, if you try to do it going straight forward like this, is they will tend to speed up, or they get a little stiff and they lean into your leg. And so I'm really big on making the wrong thing hard and the right thing easy. So when I teach a horse how to get off my inside leg, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk a very small circle like this, a lot of bend, walk a very small circle. Now, it would be hard for the horse to get smaller in this circle. So when I put my inside leg on, it will be very hard for this horse to lean in any further, because he's already about as far in as he's going to go. The other thing is, if the horse was to speed up, it's going to be, if I keep him in this circle, it's going to be hard for him to go fast in this smaller circle, and he'll want to get bigger. And that's the thing I'm trying to get him to do, is move over and off my leg and make that circle a little bit bigger. So where I start is in this tiny little circle, and I start adding my inside leg. And it's, like I said, it's very hard for him to lean in, it's very hard for him to speed up. And if he did speed up, I'll just make him trot here. If they did speed up, I just keep my inside leg on, keep it on, keep it on, keep it on. And after a while, he's like, that's too much hard work. That wasn't good. What else can I do? And they'll probably do that and start to move out, and then I'd release that leg. But that is how I would teach that tool, and that's one of the most important tools I think we have training horses, is the ability to use that inside leg. As I just mentioned, and I've talked about it in previous episodes, one of the first things I'm going to teach in a young horse is how to bend their head laterally here and bend their head laterally here. When they're good at that, then the next thing I start doing is I try to get them to untrack their feet. Okay, so I want them to step over behind like that. Now it seems like two pretty simple exercises, but when I'm doing that, I'm really trying to get to where, if the horse is moving, I'm trying to get to where I'm connecting this inside hind foot to this rein. And so if you watch this, I'll walk along here on Bundy, and I'm going to pick up on my right rein, and you watch, when I do that, his body's going to bend and he's going to step his inside hind foot underneath him. I'll walk away from the camera. If you watch his right hind foot, when I pick up here, right there, he starts stepping under with that hind foot. And so that is a tool you'll need if your horse tries to buck or bolt. If your horse goes to buck or bolt and you cannot get a bend in their body and get them to start crossing and uncrossing their hind feet, you really need to be really, really good at riding, bucking or bolting. And so, you know, it almost fits into the category of the need to know the answer before you ask the question, but it's also, you need to create a tool before you use a tool. So if your horse can't bend, okay, and you don't have this rein connected to this hind foot, and something goes wrong and your horse bucks or bolts or whatever, and you haven't got that part sorted first, you're going to be in a whole world of hurt with that horse bucking or bolting, because you don't have the tool to fix the problem you've currently encountered. So I'm really trying to get them to where, if I can install that tool first, when the problem shows up, I can then fix it. I recently had a friend of mine go and take a lesson from an overseas dressage instructor, and she doesn't do dressage and her horse doesn't do dressage. She's a quarter horse, but she's got all these parts working on her horse. And when she took the dressage lesson, they did a lot of technical things. They were doing shoulder ins and doing half passes and things like that. And he said to her, so who taught this horse dressage? And she said, well, nobody taught him dressage. He said, well, okay, semantics, who trained the horse? And she said, well, I did. And he said to her, well, who taught you dressage? And she said, nobody taught me dressage. All it was all of these tools were working, and they could put the tools together and get all sorts of really cool things happening. So it's really another version of the need to know the answer before you ask the question. But the interesting thing was, my friend watched the lesson after hers, and that horse didn't have all those tools that worked quite as well as hers did, even though it was a dressage horse. And she said the lesson kind of went downhill because they were trying to do the same technical movements that she was doing with her horse in her lesson, but the horse in the lesson that came after hers, all the tools didn't work. And so when they tried to use those tools to solve problems, either, you know, inside leg, outside rein, back up, go forward, any of those things, whatever it was, the people were actually having trouble with the horse because all of the tools didn't work. So what I would suggest doing if something like that happened is go back to the previous episode of the Principles of Training, which is isolate, separate, and recombine. So if you're trying to use your tools to solve a problem and one of the tools you were trying to use didn't work, you would actually figure it out, get isolated in your head and go, which one of these is not working? You would separate it from the problem, you would solve it, get that tool working again, and then you could recombine and go back to do it again. So like I mentioned earlier, by this point in time, there are so many of the previous principles that are underlying what's going on right now. That would be make the wrong thing hard, the right thing easy. We've also talked about don't go to bed angry. We've also talked about the need to know the answer before you ask the question. So if you think about the example I just gave, I don't think that horse had any of its tools that worked perfectly well. They're all fair to middling sort of thing, but when you put them together and you're trying to do something technical, that's when the frustration from the horse would set in and the confusion would set in, because you're trying to create something out of a bunch of tools that don't work. But if you think about if all those tools had worked quite well, but putting them together something fell to pieces, then we would refer back to the previous episode, which is called isolate, separate, and recombine. And if you're trying to do something technical like say a shoulder in, and things weren't working. Whichever part of this wasn't working, if your horse wasn't getting off your left rein, you might want to go back and soften that bit up. If your horse wasn't getting off your outside rein, if that part wasn't working, you might want to work on that bit. If your horse wasn't getting off your inside leg, you might want to just turn it into a leg yield and say, hey, get off my inside leg. If your horse wasn't responding to your outside leg, you might want to do a haunches in and say, hey, get off my outside leg. But you would just break that down into that whole isolate, separate and recombine. But that's in the case if all of your tools worked perfectly well. And like I said, the instance that my friend saw was, I don't think those tools worked quite well, and so then the technical movements became quite a bit of a nightmare to try to work on. I mentioned earlier that I've got, all those different body parts that I can move, and also the mental ups and downs, and they're about really all you need to solve most issues, but those things have to be good, and you could solve anything with them. I hear of some people say, oh, I can't get my horse to open a gate. I'm out on the trail ride, I come to a gate and I can't get my horse to open the gate. Opening a gate just involves the ability to move all the horse's body parts wherever you want. You need to be able to move the front end over in both directions. You need to be able to move the hind end over in both directions. You need to be able to back up. You need to be able to go forward. You need to be able to move the whole horse laterally in both directions. And if you could do all that, a gate would be quite easy to open. I mean, I've got several videos on YouTube of young horses on the first time I've ever opened a gate on them, and they're perfectly fine because I could move their body parts like that before I ever tried to open the gate. In an earlier episode called The Application of Your Aids, I talked about someone who was at a clinic and they couldn't get their horse to canter. Their horse didn't really want to canter, or they had a hard time getting it to canter. And it turned out that they were trying to use both legs to get the horse to canter, but the tool, the both legs, did not work. And so in order to solve that issue, we went back and we taught that horse how to get off one leg. Got this leg where it's quite responsive. We got this leg to where it was quite responsive. Then we got both legs quite responsive at the walk, both legs quite responsive for the trot. And then, if you remember, I showed the video, by the time the guy asked the horse to canter, so the first time in the whole clinic that we've actually wanted to work on the canter, we asked that horse to canter, and he just cantered off nice and forward and relaxed, something he's never really done before. But if you think about the reason the guy was having trouble is because he was trying to use a tool that didn't work to solve his issue. By the time we got the tool working, he didn't really have an issue. So all the way along in my training process, what I'm really doing is I'm teaching, the tool I'm teaching now is the tool that's going to get me out of trouble with the next thing I go to. And I've trained enough horses now to know what problems I'm usually going to run into, and I make sure I've designed my program to where everything I'm teaching the horse now is the thing that helps me at the next step and the next step and the next step. And so hopefully this episode's giving you a little bit of an idea about why it's important and how you go about teaching a tool before you try to use that tool. So don't forget to join us next time, and we'll look at another principle of training.